This video will wrap up my 3-part series on board gaming definitions. I've talked about types of games, I've talked about types of game mechanics, now I'm going to basically do a catch-all to talk about types of gamers and any other odd sods that I haven't thought of already. I am Luke Hector and welcome to another board game glossary video. This is the third of 3 videos I'm doing, and the first 2 have already tackled types of board games and types of board game mechanics. This one is mostly a catch-all, but it will tend to focus more on gamer types. So I've already tackled the games themselves, but sometimes in casual conversation when you're sitting at a board game table, we'll talk about these traits, these personality traits that we as gamers have, and sometimes I'll throw them out in videos as much as everybody else will, and you're probably there thinking, huh? What does that mean? Well, hopefully this video will give you some context. The alpha gamer. Now, this is a sentence you don't want to get caught up in the mix of. When we're talking about cooperative games, this is seen to be the bane of such a genre. The definition is kind of in line with the alpha of a wolf pack, i.e. the leader. But when it comes to board games, it's seen as a kind of negative connotation because what an alpha gamer does is they are the ones who take charge in a co-op game. Now, that's not to say you can't have a leader in a co-op game or someone who dictates the rules or tries to coordinate people together. That's fine, you can have that. The alpha gamer syndrome, as it's called though, is where one of those players takes charge to the extent that they ignore what other players are thinking of. They believe that their way is best and that a game should be played in this manner or it's being played wrong. This is the equivalent of playing a game of Pandemic, say, and then after that person has taken their 4 action point moves, before you get a chance as the next player to go, okay, so what should I do next? They've already decided that they're going to practically move your pieces for you and say, well, you could do that, but no, you really should do this. You know, you should go over here. Right, done, next player. That is something you don't want to be. You don't want to be that kind of player. And this is not something that casual gamers are going to suffer from very much because they'll be generally new to the games we're playing. But some of us who have played these games many times, we have to be careful not to let our own experiences with the game dictate how we should treat other players at the table. I, for one, teach games such as Flashpoint Fire Rescue in a very specific way. I'll talk about the actions that people can do, but when it's their turn, Flashpoint is one of those games where every action that they do is generally going to be helpful. So what I can say to someone who's like, what do you think I should do on my turn? I tend to say, well, here's the options you have. You could take out that hazardous ingredient. You could go help control the fire. You could go rescue the cat. You could go take the fire engine and go spray the house with whatever. You know, you can do all these options. What do you think you want to do? What would you prefer to do? And then they make the decision and they enjoy the game a lot more. At the end of the day, it's not about whether you win or lose the game. Okay, yes, fine, you play to win and it's like, oh, we lost. Oh well. We'll do better next time. And because those players learn more about the game, they get more to grips with the mechanics and how the game should be played, so you don't have to worry that you're going to turn into an alpha gamer. Just take some patience with these people, and be yourself in gaming, but just don't be the angry alpha wolf. Oh, one of the most famous terms you are going to hear anybody talk about when it comes to gamers, AP, known as analysis paralysis. This is a term that I don't think is unique to board gaming in general, but it's used a lot within our hobby. And this typically is given to the player who takes forever to take their turns.
Get on with it. Yes, get on with it.
This is typically something that arises a lot more in Euro games, particularly the heavy strategic ones, where it might present you with a good 5 or 6 different options that you can do, and this player will be so overwhelmed by the choices that they take a long time to analyze out each particular choice and can't make a decision as to which one they think should be better. This is usually because they're trying to do well at the game despite the fact it's their first time, but this can also relate to players who know the game very well and just are so desperate to win that they want to make certain that the choice they make is the optimal one rather than just play and enjoy the game. But this can happen to a lot of people. Even myself included have fallen victim to this on rare occasions, although I like to think I'm a fairly fast gamer. but particularly with new gamers, you are going to get those players who could take something as Sushi Go levels of simple perhaps, and just take forever to take their turn because they're analysing different options that they are not used to. We need to be patient with these people. You know, some of them are new to games, some of them just do take a while to take their turns, but you should never let it get you riled, even though this can be one of the more irritating personality traits that a player can have. But, you know, different strokes for different folks, people operate at different speeds, and we just need to be aware of that. Very simple, this one. A casual gamer is simply someone who enjoys games but doesn't actively pursue them as a major hobby. I'm not a casual gamer, you can see that, and that's just from the games behind me, let alone the ones in the other room. But a casual gamer will be somebody who enjoys games. My family enjoys games, but they don't actively pursue the hobby. They have a few games in their collection, I bring home some and we get to play them. They don't like every single game I throw at them, but they don't have a whole cupboard full of games. They don't keep up with Board Game Geek, they don't watch YouTube videos on the subject, although they have seen my YouTube videos. How embarrassing.
No, go past this part. In fact, never play this again.
This is just a case of somebody enjoys the hobby but doesn't actively get addicted to it. Pretty straightforward, moving on. Cult of the old or new. This is a term that's given to a group of people as opposed to a single one. But this comes down to board game releases. At the moment, board games come out so often now that it's kind of ridiculous. There are way too many games out there. I mean, I love checking out new board games, but seriously, the hobby could do with a little bit of a contraction in its release schedule, just so that we have time to breathe with the amount of games we have. And because of this, especially in the last 10 or so years, this whole idea of cult of the new has arisen. Cult of the new basically means that it's not like a literal cult, it's just a group of people. But the idea is that these players are so hyped up about new games that come out. The new hotness comes out and they're like, I want to play that and this is going to be amazing. Even if there's another game that's already out that is just as good, if not possibly better than what's coming out now. Kickstarter's had an impact on this because you can argue that some of these people are more like the cult of the unreleased, which is games haven't even been finished yet, but the hype is so grand for them that everybody has already declared it the next best thing since sliced bread. You've only got to look at the Frosthaven Kickstarter for that to come into play. It's not even finished yet, but everybody's now already predicting it will be the top game of 2021. Great. But, you know, that aside, it just means that people are more interested in what's new rather than what's old. And conversely, cult of the old is similar, except these people are kind of disregarding new games by saying that the old games are always going to be better, therefore why do I need any of this new stuff? You know, the old ones are better, stick with it. Where do I feature? I'm kind of a balance of the two, to be honest. I get excited about new games, but even I have to acknowledge that sometimes the old ones just do it better. Every time I see a ton of polyomino games come out now, but since Baron Park I haven't found a single one that I consider to be better than Baron Park. Okay, there were probably polyomino games before Baron Park, but that was the first one that's all ooh yeah, you know, this one's pretty sweet in the way it works. But there are games from the 1990s that are still popular. I mean, Magic the Gathering is still not exactly going to be replaced anytime soon. Catan, as much as people like to wail on Catan, can you name me another Euro game that is as simple as Catan, but also allows you to do the trading between other players? Not many of them out there. Catan is still one of the games that just does it the best. And Dominion even. We've got so many deck builders out there, so that they've combined with movement on the board and area control and all these other different variants, but people still enjoy playing the original Dominion, the one that really started deck building as a genre, and rightly so. It was in my top 10 deck builder list, you can go check that out as well. But honestly, you've got to think that the old games are still just as good, if not better, than some of the new ones. But then, there are times when the old games are kind of getting a little bit dated or need an update, and it's nice that when something new comes out and goes, right, you did it well, but I can do it a little bit better. It's hard to say, both of them can be seen as positive and negative, it's just a group term that's derived from the board game hobby. Kingmakers. This is something that goes against the spirit of the game you're playing, and sometimes you cannot avoid being in this situation. Of course, if you do get that situation, sometimes that's because the game design is a little bit on the flawed side. You should not be able to allow for that sort of thing to happen in your game. But a Kingmaker is where a player is put into a situation where the move that they make basically makes another player win. Sometimes it's unavoidable. You might be caught in a horrible situation where you have to decide between two actions, and whichever action you perform will influence one player's victory, and you know it will influence it. It will be directly affecting. Okay, if I go take this territory here, that means that I'm hurting you, which means you're gonna win. But if I take that territory there, I'm hurting you, which means you win. Which one do I pick? And it's never an easy choice when that happens. Personally, I just decide to go for the one that benefits me the most. If it means that player A wins, then fine, player A wins. It's not important who wins at the end of the day. But I can at least say, right, I made a choice here that makes my position better than it was before. This one makes me more, like a lot more better. This one makes me just slightly better. Fine, I'll go for this option. Even though I will not be able to jump from third place to second place, I'm still going to do the action that benefits me the most. That's the most logical way to go about it. The problem with this term though is when somebody king makes deliberately and they know it. And this can be sometimes part of like the metagame where people are just trying to be jerks to each other. Where someone just has a grudge against one player, maybe because they got screwed by them earlier, and just deliberately goes out of the way to say, well, you know what, I'm going to screw you because you hurt me earlier, and I'm going to let this person win instead of you.
And exactly how many times did he fall out of the window?
You do that, get out of my game table, because I don't want that sort of play in my area. But yeah, Kingmakers, it's not a good term to be licensed with, but you can't always avoid it. So when you do end up in that situation, let's just hope your diplomacy skills are up to par. I just mentioned a word that I probably need to define now, so I'm going to do so. The metagame. This is not just a board gaming term, this works for all sorts of other hobbies as well. But the metagame is talking about influences or factors outside of the game you're playing that influence the way the next game is played. This is typically used a lot with social deduction games. Let's say, for example, you play the Resistance. And in the Resistance, you have the good guys against the bad sides, and there's heated arguments, somebody betrays another, the game finishes and the good guys win. You then play a second game with the group, and somebody who you betrayed in the previous game doesn't trust you in the next game despite the fact they should do. It's because their previous influences from before are now affecting their decision making in the new game. And this is just a natural thing that occurs, particularly with the bluffing and lying games. Somebody screws you over in one game, you're not going to forget that when you go into the next game. Some people can do it though, you really ideally should just treat things with a blank slate, but these things can happen and it will influence people in their decisions. It's not always a bad thing though. Party games, for example, can have some great metagame decisions made, particularly when somebody does something wrong by accident and it causes a big laugh. For example, if you play Time's Up the game, then in one game you will give out clues and somebody might make a stupid clue about something and it just causes the biggest laughs because it's blatantly wrong, but it allows people to guess the clue word and it just creates that sense of fun throughout the game. You then play it again, and the fact that someone made that mistake before gets used in order to describe another clue because they remember it from the one before. Even if it's about a completely different clue word, the experience of before manages to influence the next game. That's a positive metagame. It doesn't hurt the gameplay, if anything, it just draws more laughs. But this is how you can see where metagame can be seen both positive and negative, and a lot of this just comes down to the players themselves. Turtling? What on earth is that, you might ask? Well, this is mainly in relation to military type games. It's the idea that if you imagine a turtle, it's a relatively frail creature, but when it's inside its shell, it's impervious to a lot of damage because that is a rock solid shell it's under. Well, this is similar to what this player will do in a military type game. Imagine a scene where you're controlling parts of a map and players are attacking each other with their various armies. A turtling player is where somebody takes up a defensive position, usually in their own base or in a bottleneck somewhere, and then just builds up and builds up from that point and maintains a strong defensive position rather than going on the offense. The best example I can think of is from the game Risk. The flaw I have with the map in a big way is Australasia. That continent down there, you have 4 territories and only 1 entrance or exit out of there. So how many times have you played Risk where somebody has conquered the entire continent and then just built up in Siam and just done nothing but build up and just make this massive impenetrable wall that you can't get past? That effectively is turtling. Is it a bad thing in games? It depends on the game. Sometimes you need to be defensive in order to keep yourself in check, but then there are times where somebody doing that basically ends up winning the game because nobody was able to hurt them. Although that's more of a flaw of the game than it is anything else, because a decent military game should reward both offense and defense. But turtling, it's usually seen as a coward's way out, but sometimes it's a useful strategy in games. Again, it just depends on the context. The min-maxer. I throw this one out a bit more often than most people, but this is a trait I don't want to throw out at you because ideally I don't want you to do this. Min-maxers are linked in previous terms to the analysis paralysis player, where I mentioned that they get a wealth of options and they can't make a decision because it's like there's so much to decide, what do I do? The min-maxer knows what they're doing, however, except they choose to take forever on their turn because what they are trying to do is win by the most points possible. They're trying to maximize their efficiency, maximize their game. It's not enough for a min-maxer to simply win against you, they want to demolish you. I could beat you 94 points to 93, and I will class that as a victory and shake your hand and go, good game, sir. But these people don't want to win 94 to 93, they want to win 194 to 10. They want to tread you into the dirt. They just want to stomp you down and bask in their victorious moment as they get the most points ever.
I must break you.
Not a trait I want to be throwing at you in a game, because these people are analysis paralysing for the wrong reasons. If you are new to gaming and it takes you a while to come up with the options, that's fine. Ask questions. Ask us questions. We will be more than happy to help you throughout the game. But if you are deliberately holding the game up because you are more concerned about winning than you are about having fun, that's not a gamer trait I want. So that's it for my board game glossary series. I hope this has helped you to gain a better understanding of what we are throwing at you in this board gaming hobby. Again, some of these terms have derived from other hobbies as well, or we've just kind of made them up on the spot. Some are positive, some are negative, depends on the context. But hopefully you're gaining a greater understanding of these terms, and this series has been good and useful for you. Now, of course, there may be some terms that you people have already thought of that I haven't covered in these videos. If that's the case, then please leave them in the comments below and define them yourself so that other people can read and learn about them as well. If I tried to define every single term in existence in board gaming, I'd probably have to do a 20-part video for this. I hope you've been enjoying the videos I've been putting out on my channel, but I'm not the only content creator out there. There are many more besides, and they all deserve your support, including this channel. Why don't you give them a look and see what you think?
Hello everyone, the boardroom is open and Luke from the Broken Meeple has reached out to all smaller content creators with a call to action. What's the call to action? Share a video like this to promote each other in the board game space. I'm Jeff Anderson with Boardroom Gamer, and I specialize kind of in doing solo play Mondays, some 2-player Tuesdays where I reach out to people across the country, even the world, to join me virtually to play physical board games on my table, as well as a series I call Shelf Talk, where I take a game off my shelf and I talk about it. Why do I like it? Why do I play it? How do you play it? How do you win? And what I think about it. So Luke, thanks so much for this call to action. I really appreciate it, and I hope I see some of you at the next boardroom meeting.
So that's it for this board game glossary series. If you enjoyed it and I've earned your subscription, please click the avatar in the center to subscribe. Other than that, you can check out the previous part into my board game glossary at the top, or you can check out my recent podcast episode below where I talk about my recent family gaming. Until next time, take care, and remember, it's only a game.